The dark woods do not care if you are crying, especially when the people who put you there are laughing as they drive away. I stood in the heavy twilight with a handful of damp kindling, watching the red taillights of my family van fade into a distant cloud of exhaust. They told me it was a fun game, a small challenge to see if I could find firewood before nightfall. My name was Chloe, and until that suffocating July evening, I truly believed my family loved me. We were supposed to be celebrating the final days of summer before my senior year of high school began. My mother Diane and my uncle Todd had spent the entire drive whispering and smirking in the front seat while I sat quietly in the back. The thick silence that followed their sudden departure was much heavier than the humid night air. I sat on a rotting log for hours, absolutely convinced that those familiar headlights would reappear around the bend. Morning brought no rescue, only swarms of aggressive mosquitoes and a severe sunburn that made my skin crawl with agony. My cheap sandals snapped after the first mile. By the time the horizon began to blur from my exhaustion, I spotted a crooked neon sign buzzing outside a lonely gas station. A man named Julian sat behind the ancient counter, looking up from his newspaper with genuine concern. My lips were cracked and bleeding, and my throat felt like it was filled with dry sand when I begged him to use the landline. I dialed my mother Diane several times, but each desperate attempt went straight to her automated voicemail. I left a shaking message begging them to come back for me, but deep down, I already knew the awful truth. Julian allowed me to rest on a wooden bench inside the store, graciously giving me a stale sandwich and a paper cup filled with tap water. For 3 days, I swept the dusty floors and organized old magazines to earn my temporary stay in the back storage room. On the 4th afternoon, I overheard Julian speaking softly to someone on his telephone through the cracked door. He explained that he could not keep feeding a random teenager because he ran a small business, not a homeless shelter. The sudden realization that nobody was actively searching for me shattered whatever tiny piece of hope remained in my chest. I gathered my few belongings during the middle of the night while Julian snored loudly near the register. I stepped out into the freezing darkness, vowing that I would never depend on another human being for the rest of my life. The giant concrete skyline loomed ahead like a gray fortress by the time my bare, blistered feet completely gave out. I curled up behind a rusty metal dumpster in a crowded alleyway, shivering violently as rats scurried through the mountain of trash nearby. The city was bursting with noise and people, yet I had never felt more invisible or abandoned. The next morning brought an unexpected savior when an older woman named Miriam found me huddled in the freezing cold. She was carrying heavy garbage bags out of a local grocery store and paused to offer me a plastic sack of fresh bread rolls. Miriam invited me to a small soup kitchen down the street, promising a hot bowl of rice and beans. I stayed at the community shelter for weeks, claiming I was 18 years old so they would not call the authorities. Miriam and her quiet husband Arthur gave me a thin mattress in their back supply room. I worked hard every single day, scrubbing heavy iron pots and learning how to stretch a budget to feed dozens of desperate people. One afternoon, a stern state official carrying a clipboard walked into the kitchen, causing Miriam to look terrified. She whispered for me to hide in the pantry, but I could hear their tense conversation clearly through the thin drywall. The woman demanded identification papers, stating that unregistered minors had to be reported to the local police department immediately. I did not wait for them to discover my hiding spot behind the heavy bags of flour. I grabbed my worn sneakers and ran back out into the maze of city streets, leaving the identity of Chloe behind forever. I walked into a crumbling motel and registered under the name of Paige, paying the desk clerk with the few crumpled dollars I possessed. For several years, I existed as a mere shadow, taking low-paying jobs that did not require any formal background checks. I washed greasy dishes, folded heavy laundry in damp basements, and swept up hair at cheap salons. On my birthdays, I simply scratched a hidden line into a small notebook, marking my slow transition from a child into an adult. Everything changed on a freezing evening when I noticed a weathered piece of paper taped tightly to a telephone pole. My own childhood face stared back at me beneath the bold word indicating I was missing. The printed text claimed that my family missed me dearly and prayed for my safe return after a tragic camping accident so long ago. A massive wave of white-hot rage consumed me as I stared directly at that printed lie. They did not lose me. Those cruel people deliberately left me to die alone in those dark woods. I ripped the paper from the wooden pole, tearing my own printed smile in half, and stuffed the crumpled remains deep inside my winter coat pocket. Desperate for a better life that did not involve exhausting manual labor, I eventually found employment at a chaotic electronics repair shop. The owner, an elderly man named Mr. Chen, hired me to organize loose wires and broken components. I spent hours watching him solder intricate circuit boards, learning how to revive dead computers through sheer observation and immense patience. Within 3 years, I completely mastered advanced programming and developed a specialized security application designed to protect women walking alone at night. I launched the software under a corporate alias called Aegis Dynamics, completely shielding my identity from the public. The application went viral globally, turning my quiet life into an overnight technological empire with immense revenue. By the age of 25, a persistent investigative journalist managed to track down my private penthouse office. He slid the exact same missing child flyer across my mahogany desk, asking directly if I was the long-lost Chloe Walters. I looked directly into his eyes, smiled calmly, and told him that specific girl did not survive the woods. Meanwhile, back in the quiet suburbs, Detective Vance sat at the dining table with my mother Diane and Uncle Todd. He informed them that a recent fingerprint tip placed their missing daughter at a technology firm worth millions of dollars. Diane scoffed loudly at the news, claiming that I was far too stupid to ever accomplish anything successful or meaningful. I did not want simple revenge, I wanted them to witness exactly what they had thrown away so carelessly. I organized a massive corporate gala at a beautiful glass pavilion to celebrate the ongoing success of my company. I sent 4 custom VIP invitations directly to my family, ensuring they would finally see the powerful person I became without them.